The envelope sat on my kitchen counter like a coiled snake. Certified mail. From the Pinewood Heights Homeowners Association Legal Department. My hand shook as I tore it open, already knowing it couldn't be good news. Notice of lawsuit. The header screamed in bold letters. Plaintiff, Pinewood Heights HOA. Defendant, Marcus Chun. Cause of action, destruction of property, trespassing, vandalism. I had to laugh. Actually laugh out loud in my empty kitchen. The audacity was breathtaking. Let me back up 6 months to where this nightmare began. I bought the corner lot at 47 Timber Ridge specifically because it was oversized, nearly 2 acres with a small guest house in the back corner. The previous owner, Mrs. Henderson, had been there for 40 years. When she passed, her daughter was eager to sell. I paid cash, closed in 3 weeks, and spent the next 2 months traveling for work before I could move in properly. That's when I discovered the problem. I'd driven up on a Tuesday morning, excited to finally settle into my new place, when I noticed something odd. Behind my main house, where the old guest cottage used to sit, there was a different structure, bigger, newer, with fresh white siding and a shiny metal roof that caught the morning sun. I parked and walked toward it, my stomach already twisting with dread. The guest house I'd seen during the walkthrough had been a charming 1970s cabin, weathered cedar with a green shingle roof. This was a modern prefab building, maybe 100 square feet, with vinyl windows and a concrete foundation. A sign on the door read, Pinewood Heights HOA Community Center, authorized personnel only. My blood went cold. I immediately called my real estate attorney, Rebecca Morrison. She answered on the second ring. Rebecca, I need you to pull my property survey right now. I said, my voice tight. The HOA built something on my land. 3 hours later, Rebecca sat in my living room with documents spread across my coffee table. The survey was crystal clear. The new building sat entirely on my property, 60 feet inside my boundary line. They have no legal right to this structure, Rebecca said, tapping the survey with her pen. None whatsoever. Did you give them permission? I've never even spoken to the HOA board. I replied, I just closed 2 months ago. Rebecca made some calls. What we discovered made my blood boil. The HOA had approached Mrs. Henderson 3 years ago about using the back corner of her lot for a community center. She'd said no repeatedly. After she died, they apparently assumed the new owner, me, wouldn't notice or wouldn't care. They demolished the old guest house within weeks of my closing and erected this new building in just under 6 weeks. They gambled that you wouldn't check, Rebecca said grimly, or that you'd be too intimidated to fight back. They gambled wrong. I sent a certified letter to the HOA board demanding they remove the structure within 30 days. The response came from Richard Pemberton, the HOA president, a pompous real estate developer who lived in the neighborhood's largest house. His letter was a masterpiece of arrogance. He claimed the HOA had informal permission from Mrs. Henderson, a lie. Her daughter confirmed this. He suggested I was being unneighborly and selfish. He hinted that fighting the HOA would make my life in Pinewood Heights very difficult. The letter concluded that the building would remain, and I could take appropriate legal action if I felt necessary. Challenge accepted. On day 31, I hired a demolition company, not some fly-by-night operation, but a licensed, insured contractor who specialized in residential teardowns. I had every permit I needed. The building was on MY property. I had every legal right to remove it. The demolition was scheduled for a Thursday morning at 7 a.m. I'll never forget the look on Richard Pemberton's face when he came roaring up my driveway in his Mercedes as the excavators claw bit into the roof of his community center. "What the hell are you doing?" he screamed, leaping from his car. His face had gone purple. I stood next to my pickup truck, arms crossed, wearing a satisfied smile. Removing an illegal structure from my private property. Good morning, Richard. You can't do this. This is HOA property. Actually, it's not. I held up the survey. This is MY property. That's my dirt you built on without permission. I asked you nicely to remove it. You refused, so I'm removing it. By now, a crowd had gathered. Other neighbors lined the street, watching the excavators tear down the building. Some looked shocked. Others, more than I expected, looked pleased. Apparently, Richard's reign as HOA president hadn't won him many fans. I'll sue you. Richard sputtered. I'll sue you for everything you've got. You're welcome to try, I said calmly. My lawyer is very excited about the countersuit. Trespassing, illegal construction, property destruction of Mrs. Henderson's original guest house, fraud. This isn't over. Richard stormed back to his Mercedes and peeled out, kicking up gravel. The demolition took 4 hours. By noon, the illegal community center was reduced to rubble, loaded into dump trucks, and hauled away. I had the area graded smooth and seeded with grass. By the following week, you'd never know anything had been there. That's when the lawsuit arrived. Now, sitting in Rebecca's office with the lawsuit in hand, I watched her read through it with growing amusement. They're suing you for $200,000, she said. The cost of the building, emotional distress to HOA members, loss of community amenity. She started laughing. Actually laughing. Marcus, this is the worst lawsuit I've seen in 15 years of practice. So we can beat it? Beat it? We're going to obliterate it. And then we're countersuing for your legal fees, the value of Mrs. Henderson's demolished guest house, punitive damages, and I'm going to ask the judge to remove Richard Pemberton from the HOA board for gross misconduct. She leaned back in her chair, grinning. They handed us a gift. The case never made it to trial. The HOA's own attorney apparently read the facts, looked at the survey, and told them in no uncertain terms that they would lose catastrophically. 3 weeks before the court date, they dropped the lawsuit, but Rebecca wasn't done. She filed our countersuit anyway. The evidence was overwhelming. Property records, surveys, emails, witness statements from neighbors who'd heard Richard brag about teaching the new guy his place. The settlement came 2 months later. The HOA paid me $85,000, cover my legal fees, the demolished guest house, and additional damages. Richard Pemberton was removed as HOA president and barred from serving on the board again. The HOA was required to send a written apology to every homeowner, explaining what they'd done. I used the settlement money to build a beautiful new guest house on the exact spot, designed by an architect, properly permitted, and entirely on MY land. The best part? At the next HOA meeting, the new board president publicly thanked me for standing up for property rights and holding leadership accountable. Richard Pemberton sold his house and moved away 6 months later. I'm still here, enjoying my 2 acres and my new guest house. Sometimes I sit on the back porch with a beer and think about that excavator taking its first bite out of that illegal building. Best Thursday morning of my life.